You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today I've been talking about learning more, going deeper, understanding things that we might not be able to see, really. You know, the things that kind of fall out of the scope of our reality sometimes. I've seen some films, and I'm sure you have. I think it was The Sixth Sense. I think there's been several films out there, actually, where there's an individual, a human being, that can see things, that can feel things, that have like a super ability, perhaps. And I find it very interesting because I feel that we're all created equal to some degree. And I wonder if we actually all tapped into things, could we all do superhero type stuff? And I think we can. But I know that it's interesting when we want to harness that time and that power. A lot of us are looking toward our successes as far as how much money we have or the title we have at the office. You know, sometimes we want to make sure that our kids grow up great, and we really focus on those kids constantly and all the time. And I think there's certain things that go by the wayside, and we don't realize that those things are also important too. And as you know, I'm a therapist, and I talk to people about purpose and that kind of stuff. And I'm always looking for people that have this je ne sais quoi, this thing that, well, just kind of sets them apart from other people. And when you find it and it walks into your studio, you figure it's a good idea to put them on Live Your True Life Perspectives because it makes sense. You know, I think a lot of us, we've heard about mediums. And we've heard about maybe something like a soul whisperer. Somebody that can connect us to different realms. Maybe our past lives. Family that have passed. But maybe even more than that. So, in studio, joining me tonight is someone that I've recently gotten to know who was introduced to me through a very good friend. And her name is Tammy De Mirza. And Tammy's joining us here in the studio. Tammy, great to have you in the studio today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Ashley. It's good to be here.
So, Tammy, okay. You know, we talk about people that can see things, people that can connect with things, people that have passed. Tell me more about what you do.
Okay. Ashley, when I was 11 years old, we didn't go to church, so I didn't have the concept of God, didn't know who he was, didn't know about non-physical, really. I was only looking at what was in the physical realm. And then through a Southern Baptist pastor visiting my grandmother, subsequently coming to our house, I invited God, Jesus, into my heart. Immediately started getting messages in higher wisdom and communicating easily with not only God teaching me how to telepathically communicate with others, but to communicate with him. I started really doing readings for kids in school without knowing. I was also freaking people out. In my 20s, that really started developing, and I started having a lot of people come into my home. And I found that the abilities that one has, what I knew to be normal for me, others were not having. So I started to get really upset with the process and feel very uncomfortable with the capacity that I had until I understood it. And I thought that everyone else was like me. So I thought that when I brought up something about a grandmother dying or a family breaking apart or them becoming sick or whatever, I thought that everyone else was like me. And I started to realize in my early 20s that nobody was. And I felt like a freak. And I really just shook my fist at God and said, I do not like how you made me. I just want to be normal. That has matured in me very much so. I was called a counselor at a very young age in junior high school and high school. And I really was doing sessions for people, not even knowing it. I've been doing it professionally now for about 15 years. And it is amazing what I know now is that not only am I having these abilities, but the human mind, the soul, the spirit, the bulk of us is non-physical. Every single one of you, every single one of us has these capacities. I am just aware of them and give them permission to be used within me. And so what I do is teach a lot of people now how to open up to their higher selves, that magic presence within them, that I am, that spirit side of themselves. Most people actually are walking around looking at this world almost like a salute over their eyebrows, and they're only seeing a linear world. And because of that, nobody is really connecting when they're only looking from left to right. They're missing what is above, what is higher wisdom, what is higher knowing, what the capacities are. And so my work now is really about teaching people to connect with not only their personalities, but what their five senses are, how they naturally communicate with Source, with God, with Spirit, with that I am higher self. Or to teach them what their higher purpose is in getting to know thyself. When you really start to embrace yourself and you stop to identify yourself from just the linear view of looking from the eyebrows down at the world, then everything starts opening, and your capacities that you came in here, the gifts, so to speak, what I call tools in the toolbox, actually start coming up. They start popping up to the surface, and things start occurring that are unnatural to the linear world. Every single one of you have these. It's my job to help you find those. It's my work, my purpose in life, to help every single one of you to know who you are, how important you are, how much you're loved. You can't even measure it. You can't measure your skills or your abilities. I remember Oprah Winfrey saying one time that when the Motown owner came up to her, I think his name is Gordy, or what is his name? I forget. He said, "The light within you is so bright you can't stand it." That is true for every single person. I am that person that shows you what light is within you and helps to guide you home to the heart, to the soul, to the spirit side of you.
You know, Tammy, when you're working with clients, do you sometimes have a client ask you to help them with something, but that's not necessarily what they need help with?
That happens all the time. I end up telling my clients, what you think you're doing is not what you're doing. What you think you are asking me for is not what you are asking for. My purpose in assisting others is to help them to get to the deeper questions that are not even known. I deal a lot with the unconscious levels, Ashley, and what belief systems and patterns people are steeped in. And when they come to me with superficial questions, I will actually say to them, let me tell you what you were thinking on the way here, and let me tell you what you really want to know. Let me guide you to the questions that are the deepest within you that are really going to bring you home, to guide you to a sense of lighter feelings, of not being so stressed out, of not having the physical pains, of not having the emotional pains. This is a lot of what I do with others. So I will often tell them, sweetheart, what you think you're asking me is not what you're asking. I remember one time that I was speaking in the Villages, Florida, and I had a big group of people, and I'm dealing with this lady over to my right, and I suddenly stopped and looked over to my left and pointed at this lady and said, I just heard you. Know that I'm going to come to you next. I just heard what you thought. I heard everything that you were wanting to ask me. I heard what you decided to ask me. Let me go help this lady first and I'll come back to you. She started crying, Ashley, because she realized I'm going to get some help. I'm going to get some answers. So when I went back to her, I said, will you give me permission to share with everybody in this audience what your thought process was, what you thought, and then what you decided? And she said yes. And by the time we got to the truth of it, she's laughing and crying. And then we answered her. Or better yet, what I like to do is guide you to your own answers, because they're all within you.
That's amazing. I agree with you on that. I think we all have those answers. We just have to realize the fact that we do. And I think sometimes we've been trained, I guess there's patterns of life. And I talk about this on the show a lot, how our family raised us a certain way, you know, and you know that, Tammy, where there's certain things that you can do, you know, via what they say. And there's certain things that you can't do. And I find it interesting when you have a client that comes in and they're based on that thought process. And normally it's very limiting. I can't do this. Well, they don't even know why. And do you see that a lot when you're working with clients, even at a bigger scale?
Yes. What happens is, and where the quandary is that, and a lot of times in my sessions, I will start out by saying, would you repeat after me? Once we get to the fullness, once we get to the healing portion of a session, I will say, repeat after me if this resonates with you. In this lifetime, my name is. But that is not who I am. The issue that we have, Ashley, as you well know because of your work, is that people come into certain families. We have spiritual contracts to come in to those families. What we do is give our power away and decide that the person who loves us the least is actually the one that deserves most of our power and identifies us as unlovable. And so we are sitting there trying our best to get that one that we know. In my case, there wasn't a mother, there wasn't a father, there wasn't a grandparent, there wasn't an aunt, there wasn't even an uncle, guys. I really came in as a brave soul to overcome nobody in my family really loving me. And that's because my work is about showing people how loved they are. So, of course, you come in to experience the contrast. The issue that I had, Ashley, was when I decided that my mother, who was the biggest perpetrator of the evidence that I was unlovable, when I gave her my power and said, you dictate my identity, you dictate whether or not I am loved, then I started going under. And it wasn't until I took that power back and realized that the only way I was really going to get healing from her and others who had proven that I was unlovable was for me to look to God or a higher power and say, you say you love me, show me. Because here I am, I'm working with individuals, but I'm not feeling loved. And then at some point I said, I'm not going to do your work anymore. I'm not going to help anybody. I'm not going to keep people from committing suicides. I'm not going to pray over dogs that have died and them get raised from the dead. I'm not doing this work anymore. I'm not healing cancer by praying over it or reading the cancer in somebody's body. I'm sick of that. You've got to help me to know that I'm loved. And I really, for a period of about 15 years, stopped this work because I needed love. I needed fed. I needed to go on my own personal journey. It was one of the most profound things that I did. And that's kind of the breakthrough that I do, I think, for other people because God showed me how to go through it. I assist others in get rid of who you think others think you are and pay more attention to what higher wisdom and love says that you are. That's when you're really going to start coming out of this shell that you are living in this box that feels so confining.
That's interesting you bring that up, Tammy, because that's one thing that I do talk about is when we're born, we are born into a family, and it's like automatically our parents are the gods.
Yes.
And we forget all the other stuff. It's kind of like when you have a dog. My dog probably thinks I'm a god, you know? I mean, but we forget that there's a higher being. And you're right, it's interesting how the one family member, or all of them for that matter, the ones that treat you more like crap, the ones that don't show you love are the ones that you try to impress so bad. And I think a lot of folks out there right now, maybe mom wasn't really there for you. Every time that you were trying to get mom's attention, maybe she wasn't around. Maybe mom didn't really feel like she loved you. Maybe it might be dad. It might be your dad. For some of you ladies out there listening right now, you know, dealing with dad and having a relationship with dad might have been very tough. He might not have been around. And then every time he was there, you were like basically throwing yourself at him, hoping and praying that he would stay.
Yes.
And I think that happens a lot. And I think we miss out on that bigger scale of why we're here. You know, Tammy, I know that a lot of people want to know about past lives.
Yes.
Do our past lives impact our current life?
Yes.
Tell me more.
So I will tell you a story about an inmate that I did a reading for on the phone. He's 67 years old, and he's trying to talk to me because we only have 15 minutes. The prison system will only allow a 15-minute phone call. He's trying to talk to me about his sentence and getting out of prison, and I said, "Can I help you with what is going on in your life today?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Then I'm going to have to change the subject. I'm going to have to talk about you in the shower." I said, "Every single day that you get into the shower, you are traumatized. This has been happening for you all of your life. Would you like to know why?" He's crying at this point, and I barely heard this murmur, And I said, "Okay, sweetheart, you were on the Titanic, and I'm seeing the room, and I'm seeing you snuggled in the bed with your wife. You're that couple that we saw in the movies, actually staying in the room. You knew that there was death coming, and you decided to snuggle your way out of this realm, and you saw the water coming down much like the shower." He said that he had always had a fascination with the Titanic, but never knew what the connection is. And guess what, folks? He has never once again been traumatized by getting in the shower. And here he was in the confines of a prison where you don't get to choose to get a bath or not. And I said, helping you on this level of every single day, this traumatizing thing that's occurring in your life, let's free that. And that's the work that we did with him in that 15 minutes. And he's free. He no longer gets traumatized by having showers. These unusual fears that you have are somehow associated with past life memories, and because of quantum physics, it is as if you are experiencing it right now. You ever met anybody, Ashley, that couldn't cross a bridge, or they have a fear of heights, or they're scared of spiders and they've never been bitten by one in this lifetime? It's because of past life experiences that were never healed.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I deal with a fear. Yeah. I deal with a fear, and I actually, because everybody listening, a good therapist has to see a therapist. Okay, that's the way life is. You don't want a therapist giving you guidance and support for somebody that hasn't worked through themselves. Okay, that's just how it is. You don't want somebody giving out, dishing you all this stuff, and they're not in the right space or in the right headspace to do it. And you hear people who have had experiences of being fearful of fire. And
yes.
You find out 5 years prior to that conversation, they had a house fire.
Yes.
You hear people that are scared of water. And there was a situation when they were a kid, they almost drowned.
Mm-hmm.
Or they saved somebody from drowning, and so that PTSD has considerably been with them their whole life. What do you think if somebody had a fear of wind? Have you ever worked with anybody like that?
I have never heard anybody have a fear of wind, but would you like to know where it comes from?
I would love to know where it comes from.
Okay. There were 3 lifetimes, Ashley. One of the most profound, was actually when you were living in an island. I don't know exactly where the island is. I'm seeing it visually, but I'm not being told which island it is. But there were hurricanes. Have you noticed that you are a little traumatized? I'm trying to be gracious here. A little traumatized when people go through hurricanes and the wind and tornadoes.
I try not to focus on it,
but it's there.
But I feel bad for them.
Yes.
But I don't watch the news on that level. I send prayers, and I know that stress isn't going to help me, and it's not going to help them. My stress doesn't go feeding these people. They're turning their lights on.
Yeah, I understand. But if you're having an emotional response, whether you are, guess what we do most of the time, Ashley? We try to make ourselves comfortable with the predicament, with the emotional responses. We try to make ourselves comfortable. You have learned, because you're quite astute, you have learned how to make yourself comfortable with wind in certain situations, but it's still a fear. So until you get to the root of it, until you understand that this is a past life, you went through a lot of that. There's 3 lifetimes where I'm seeing, actually, where there's a lot of wind. One was a tornado. The other 2 were hurricanes or typhoons and hurricanes. These were These are trigger points for you. So you unintentionally, on the subconscious level, you will actually detach yourself from seeing these things or feeling the trauma of it, because I'm going to tell you something. You lived through them, and a lot of your loved ones did not. And that pain and that trauma is still on the cellular level within the mind. The mind is not just housing what is in this lifetime. It's housing every single thought you've ever had in other lifetimes, quantum physics. It's also the ability to tap in and cross those boundaries, which you cross the boundary sometimes of what is really just present and what is out there. You know that. This is why you're so good at your job, by the way.
Thank you, Tammy. It's interesting you brought that up, too, because, and I think you probably had this happen a million times with clients, is I think people try to create a story in this lifetime.
Yes.
That validates what happened. And so I remember a story that I created, and it wasn't completely fabricated, but I went to a school where 4th and 5th kids that were 4 years old and 5 years old went to school with seniors. It was all the way up to your senior year. And I was the little sister of all these little senior kids, So I was like the little baby sister that they would drive home because I didn't want to ride the bus, or they would push me in the swing. And I remember there was a few times where they pushed me in the swing pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't figure out where the wind thing came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was one time I was kind of pushed down as a kid because I was a really skinny, small kid, and I got pushed down by wind. But I don't think that was it, too. And, you go back into and I think a lot of people can connect right now. Maybe you have a certain fear that you just don't understand. And it's so overwhelming that you try to find the storyline of how you got there. It's like creating the character in the movie.
Right.
And the character's gone through this. Now we got to create the backstory. And I think so many people out there are so highly intelligent that you've created this backstory, but does that backstory really connect to what the truth is?
Right. And so what happens is that we try to just make ourselves comfortable instead of really dealing with it, which I have a newsflash for every single one of you. The answer is within you. The answer is within. And the way to get the answer is, I don't try to make people dependent on me, Ashley. I actually want them to stand in their own power, to learn these techniques, to learn how to do this. If you would have stopped yourself and said, instead of trying to figure this out, I see people going to the chalkboard a lot. Do you see that? People go to the chalkboard and they have that chalk and they are working on that equation. They are going to figure out that answer. And by the time they get through about 10 lines on the chalkboard, they don't even know where they started or what the mathematical issue is. That's what I call a diversion. A diversion from the truth is something that keeps you on the periphery of what it is that will give you the truth, which will set you free. So I'm going to teach you all something very easy to do when it comes to wanting to know something or not understanding why things are happening. Instead of getting in angst because you don't have the answer yet, I want you to sit very still and I want you to say, I do not know what this is. I do not know why this is reoccurring in my life, but I know that my higher self does know. I know that the non-physical knows. I know that the spiritual side of me has all of that information stored. So I'm going to simply ask, what is it that is causing these issues within me? I teach my clients and my students to do this, and you would not believe some of the things that they come up to me and went, oh my God, I figured out why I have this gash on my head. My mother wouldn't tell me, but because I followed your advice, I now know why I was traumatized and why she wouldn't tell me. And I got healing from it. That's the power. That's taking your power back. That's acknowledging that there's a higher part of you that is bigger than you know. And when you're just looking from the eyebrows down, you're not seeing very much, guys. But if you'll start to ask questions from the non-physical, whether you believe in angels or gods or teachers or masters or people who have crossed over to the other side, it's all the non-physical. So why not ask? Because you are part of spirit. You're a holy trinity yourselves. You are spirit, which is the greatest part of you. And then there is the emotional level of you. And then there's the physical. And when they're in alignment, you can ask anything and get any answers. If you don't get an answer back, ask the question another way. Because what I have learned is that when I go through certain things and I ask a question and I get no answer, which is very easy for me to get answers, and I know, Ashley, it is for you too, when you ask from non-physical point of view, or I'm not quite aware, I don't remember this, then I want to know that higher wisdom. I want to know more than this. This is not enough for any of us. This, what we see and what we experience, is not enough, and there is a rising within everyone that is just really starting to waken up. There's a spiritual, vibrational thing going on this earth plane, and it is time for us to start standing up and saying, I'm ready to know more of me, not just what I see in this temporal way, but more of me. I need that. And when you go with those questions and you don't get answers immediately, I used to hear my guide say, we would rather that you ask us another question. So I would ask another question. And one time I actually said, because I had this situation where a woman had gotten healed in my house, and she called me 2 weeks later and said, my granddaughter is not doing well and the doctors don't know what to do for her. So would you just sit quietly for a moment, Tammy, and ask, what is going on with my granddaughter so I can tell the doctors what to do? So I said, look, I'm about to go get ordained as a minister, and I'll sit on the bed for 5 minutes and ask before I get in the car, and I'll call you. And as I was sitting on the bed, I said, what's going on with the daughter? What do you want me to tell her to tell the doctors? I get nothing, Ashley. And so I said, okay, I'm empathic. I feel what pain, what issues, what illnesses are going on in the body. I said, so show me where this little girl's hurting. She's 9 years old. And I felt something in my lower back and abdomen. And I went, oh, there's something in the lower abdomen. But God, if that were a firecracker, I would tell you that that was a dud. You didn't give me very much. So I said, what do you want me to tell the doctors? And I hear, we would rather you ask us another question. And I said, okay, I give up. I've tried this. Give me multiple choice. And literally, immediately, it came to me, would you prefer yourself that this girl gets completely healed? Or would you prefer to take months and us give you the answers to give the doctors? And I went, well, you know my answer. My answer is the first one. I would choose for her to be healed. Then give this exactly how it occurred to the grandmother, and then have the grandmother ask her daughter. And that is exactly what happened. And guess what? Through a process of me running energy while I'm in a session, I tell the mother, I finally get her on the phone. I give her the multiple choice. She chooses healing. And I said, let me tell you why this is occurring. This is occurring because your daughter was adopted. And she came into this lifetime with this virus in her body. It got activated. And the reason that it got activated is because you're a medium and you used to give very accurate readings. Now, we don't care if you still do mediumship work or not. This lady's crying by now, Ashley, by the way. And then I said, by the way, would you please put the phone down because you just walked into your house. It's very nice. I'm just in the foyer area of your house. Your little 2-year-old is actually grabbing at your pants. Would you please put the phone down and hug her and comfort her? And she said, you see my house? I said, yeah, I'm in there with you. I'm remotely viewing this. I'm hovering. I said, please put the phone down on the tile floor. So she did. And she hugged the child. And I was crying, because I could feel and see that love and that insecurity of that little 2-year-old, knowing that the mom was traumatized. And I said, you didn't go through the garage. You went through the front door. And she said, that is exactly what I did. I was rushing to get in the door. And I said, so let me finish. Now the daughter's okay. And I said, I'm going to give you a process to do. And once you get that done in the hospital room, I will know the instant that you do it. I will ask God to bring the healing energy through my body to transmit to you, and let's see what occurs. So I said, I'll know at the moment that you do it. Your husband is a non-believer, and you stopped doing your spiritual work and stopped being aware or chasing that part of you that was the higher part of you when you started dating this man. We find no judgment with this. So she did it. And at 1:23, I'm sitting in a meeting. I have one of my clients beside me, and I said, you're my witness. she just did the process I told her to do to clear the hospital room. The heat started generating in my hands, and I just sat listening to my ordination and all the things that I needed to know with my hands open and heat running out of my hands. And then at 5 minutes till 3, I hear, "Shut this down, all is well." And so I looked at my client and I said, "Suzanne, feel my hands." And they immediately went to cool. My hands are usually cold. And she said, "That's wild." She said, "Is she healed?" I said, "None of my business." Guess what I found out? At 3 o'clock on the dot, Ashley, this little 9-year-old who I did not know was in critical care, they had called in the family because she was dying. She had not spoken in 3 days. She had not eaten in 7 days. And the doctors didn't know what to do with her. She sat up and said, "I'm hungry. Where's my iPad?" She got healed. But it was the process, how the non-physical wants to touch you. How the non-physical wants certain people involved in assisting you and supporting you and showing you signs of how much the non-physical knows is extraordinary. The healing of the girl was the healing for the mom and healing for the father and the grandmother. That's the way non-physical does it. That's the way God does it. It's so complete and full. It's beautiful.
That's amazing. Wow. That's awesome.
It's so sweet to do this work. It really is.
Well, Tammy, I want to talk about your book for just a minute. I want to have you back on the show, and I wish we had more time.
Thank you.
But can you briefly tell us about your latest book, and I hope you come back on and let us know where we can find it as well.
Okay. The book is called The Inmate and the Medium, and it is a true story about me doing a reading for a woman in Greenville, South Carolina, where I used to live. And she told me about her brother, who was very spiritual. And I said, well, I can always use another spiritual friend. She called me that afternoon and asked me to actually do a reading for her brother, but he had extenuating circumstances. He was in federal prison. And I said, stop right there. Do not tell me what he did. There is no judgment in me, or I could not do what it is that I do. I said, I will do the reading for him. Tell him to call me at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Tell him to meditate, please, before he gets on the phone with me, because we only had 15 minutes. This book is that journey of doing that reading for that inmate who was serving a 50-year sentence for trafficking tons and tons of marijuana. He got caught at the age of 35. He had already served 24 years. And by going into the prison system, I describe what it's like to go into prison, what visitors go through, what the guards are like, what the inmates are like. I describe it. As I lived in Florida, I became homeless because Phil had introduced me to a predator who stole every dime I had. But I knew that this was a spiritual journey that God was asking me to go on, a spiritual curriculum in order to overcome the world economic system and to become an alchemist and learn how to live by faith. And guys, I not only did that, I not only did not have to sleep in my car, but was guided. And that's what this book is. It's telling you the journey in my words, giving you the truth about it. I can't possibly share all the stories, but I think you'll find some of them very interesting. Doing the spiritual work with this inmate, getting him free on the inside to walk out of prison years before he was supposed to be released. And let me tell you some good news that is not even in the epilogue. Phil has now created the wheelchair in the physical realm, and he is about to put this wheelchair out on the marketplace. So what a beautiful story of him being stuck in prison, not knowing how to get out, getting himself free, and actually creating something for people who are handicapped and can't move freely.
So, Tammy, where would we find your book right now if we want to purchase a copy?
It is on every single website that you can possibly imagine, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, for a very limited time. If you go to my website at www.tammydemirza.com, I'll spell that, TammyDemirza.com, you can buy a copy of my book and I will autograph it and ship it to you for free. Also, if you do buy it through another venue or another avenue, please let me know. Please email me at tammy@tammydemirza.com, and I will invite you to a private Zoom meeting with a bunch of other people who want to ask me questions or get deeper insight into the truths and the spiritual teachings that I did with not only myself, but with Phil as well.
Tammy, I can't wait, and I look forward to having you back on Live Your True Life Perspectives.
Thank you.
What a great interview with Tammy. I think this is very interesting because I think many of us have a skill set that doesn't really fall into a kind of known geography. And what I mean by that is that I think a lot of us have abilities that we don't really understand. And I'm not saying that, everybody's just like Tammy and you could be psychic or you could be a medium. But I do feel that we have a lot more powers than we realize. I believe that we possess more power than we understand. And I believe often we as humans have a tendency of downplaying our ability to a large degree. And most of the time we don't even realize it. We don't even understand that we're doing it. Because we've been taught that we have this type of talent, or we've been taught that that's not real, or don't believe that, or, this sounds crazy or made up or whatever it is. But I really do think that whatever we believe to be true to some degree, well, quite possibly is. I find it's interesting when I was a little kid, there were things that I just didn't believe that I did well. I thought certain things I sucked at. I was like, hey, I'm not that good at this or I'm not that good at that. And it's funny how as adults you grow up and you hear your adult friends and your buddies like, oh, I'm awful at math, or, I kill every plant that comes into my house, or whatever it is. They make all these like exact comments and statements, that I'm no good at this, or I'm great at this, or I'm wonderful at this, or I suck at that. And I think we limit ourselves on every level when it comes to our life and our ability, because I do agree that if you just kind of open up your mind and allow yourself to be and not make judgment calls, perhaps we could excel at some of the things that we think we're no good at. One thing that I think we have the ability to do, and some people will argue with me and some people will completely agree with me, I believe that we have the ability to communicate with people that have passed. I believe that our family members are connected, the ones that we love, the people that love us. I think we're connected for lifetimes. I don't think that once you're out of this lifetime, you're gone. I mean, I can feel my grandmother's presence, and she passed away a few months ago. Not even then, not even that long, actually. And it's interesting. And I think if we allow ourselves to understand that nothing's final, and everything's constantly changing, but we realize that we have the power to sense things that we might not be able to see, that's interesting. And I think that when we focus on that and realize that we have abilities that we haven't yet maybe cultivated or understand, I think that's even more interesting. And that's why I chose Tammy to come on the show. I think this type of stuff interests all of us to some degree, no matter if you believe it or not. However, I think that to some degree, most of us believe and know that we have abilities outside of even our own understanding. And, I don't think I would define myself as a psychic or a medium, but I do believe that some of this stuff exists. And I think that when we begin to acknowledge certain things, our world, our self, becomes more grand. We become bigger than life because we're not just limited to this lifetime, to these thought processes, to our limitations, to what we've been told we're good at, to what we've been told that we're not good at, to what we think that we're not good at, to the things that we've said we can't even do. So I'll definitely have Tammy back on the show. In the meantime, just an idea, a thought, something you can ponder. Start that journal, or Put another page in the journal today. And think about the things that you've always said that you can't do. And find those things that you said that you can't do, but you've always wanted to do. Turn it around. Write some ideas and thoughts. And remember, it's amazing the way we think. Our thoughts become things. So the way we think directly relates to what happens in our life. If we think we're the luckiest person on the planet, then so be it. If we think we're the most unlucky person on the planet, you've seen that happen. It's like when people make that comment, it couldn't get any worse. Well, you know what? It does. And so sometimes we have to reset our minds and realize that we might have learned this at a young age, that we can't do something, but we can take off those shackles and we can begin a new chapter in this life. It's all up to you. You hold the power. You have the keys, and you hold those keys to your ability, to the understanding of the world, and to your brilliance. You can either be brilliant or you don't have to be. But I think the potential is there on every level. When you get a moment, check out YouTube. If you watch a lot of videos on YouTube, awesome. If you don't, still check it out. Go to YouTube, and in that search bar area, put Ashley Burgess, Ashley Berges. You'll find my YouTube channel. Check out some of the latest, most awesome, somewhat cool videos. Let me know what you think about them. And please don't forget to subscribe, as well as to tell your family and friends about it. And also leave some comments in the comments area underneath the video that you think is great, or you think has merit, or you're going to share with your family and friends. Also, don't forget to check out my website, ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com. You can listen to some of the latest shows as well as reading some of the most recent blogs. I look forward to speaking with you again and being there in your house, your car, in your earbuds, on your walk with you, on your run with you, at the gym with you. And I hope that I've impacted your life today in a way that's helped you on your path to be even more successful than you already are. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, you know what? I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.